from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Coming up on AgDay, a much-needed dairy processing plant goes up in Texas, but what goes on here is about so much more than milk.
There's a lot of people around here that say it just feels more like a family versus, a place to work.
Yep, this is what we're dealing with here in southeast Decatur, Nebraska.
Floodwaters continue to rise in the northern plains as trade negotiations with China take another turn.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado and the all-new Silverado HD, the strongest, most advanced family of Silverados ever.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. It was expected this week a Chinese delegation would be visiting some American farms as trade negotiations continue between the U.S. and China. But that's apparently no longer the case, and that news sent markets tumbling on Friday. The Montana Farm Bureau saying the Chinese delegation canceled the trip. Now, our sources reporting the Chinese officials had planned to visit Omaha, Nebraska and Bozeman, Montana. It comes on the heels of the two sides holding working level talks last week. Now, it was thought these talks would pave the way for more talks between top officials later in Washington. But Reuters reports the delegation returned to China sooner than expected. The U.S. did announce it was temporarily exempting more than 400 types of Chinese products like Christmas lights, plastic straws, and printed circuit boards from tariffs. However, U.S. Trade Advisor Michael Pillsbury telling the South China Morning Post that President Trump could ramp up pressure by raising tariffs to 50% or 100% if there's no trade deal soon. And work continues on another trade front. The current secretary and past secretaries of the USDA underscoring the importance of passing the new U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. While speaking in Washington, Secretary Sonny Perdue was joined by all former U.S. Secretaries of Agriculture since President Reagan's administration, all putting their support behind USMCA by sending a letter to congressional leaders.
I think there are essentially two questions that need to be asked. One is this agreement enforceable? And I think there's a good faith effort being done by the administration and Congress to make sure and to reassure people that this is an enforceable agreement. And then secondly, is this a better deal than the current deal? And I think under any evaluation from a U.S. agricultural perspective, it clearly is a better deal.
NAFTA was good, but this is much better. USMCA is better, and we all know it's better. It's better for the farmers, and as you point out, it's also better for labor. It's better for business. It's a great agreement. Get it done, and then move on to the next.
Vice President Mike Pence has said he believes Congress will pass USMCA before the end of the year. People in Texas and Louisiana spent the weekend cleaning up after the remnants of Tropical Storm Imelda unleashed torrential rains. Just look at some of the major roadways in Houston inundated with water, drivers with nowhere to go, leading to thousands of water rescues. Some areas receiving more than 40 inches of rain. And the flooding continues in the western Corn Belt. A farmer in Tekamah, Nebraska, sending us this video on Friday of him paddleboarding with his son on a field which is miles away from the Missouri River.
Yeah, right here behind me is a drainage ditch about a half mile from the river. So it is outside its banks. It's flowing into that field across the way with that pivot there. And then took the Ranger down here. Just an ocean of water.
Water levels are expected to be higher this morning since the Army Corps of Engineers upped the amount of water flowing out of the Gavins Point Dam in Yankton, South Dakota, up to 80,000 cubic feet per second. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman joining us. Mike, those areas in South Dakota and Nebraska got more rain over the weekend, and all that rain is heading downstream.
Yeah, and they had already had a fair amount of rain over the past couple of weeks. In fact, rain amounts estimated from a week ago Saturday through this past Friday shows some decent amounts from eastern Nebraska across Iowa into Illinois. But the remnants of Imelda is what really dumped the rain. I mean, there's a small area there between Beaumont and Houston that ended up with more than 2 feet of rain. Every place in purple there is 8 inches plus, though, and that's a widespread area from Houston to Beaumont and then toward Galveston, southwestward, almost to Bay City, but not quite. Now, that area to the north across the western Corn Belt, you can see from northwestern Illinois, northern half of Iowa, back into areas just north of Omaha. More rainfall, and over this past weekend, we've had a little bit more across the Plain States as well as another big system came through. We'll show you what's coming our way for the coming week in just a few minutes, but first, here are some hometown temps.
Introducing Farm Journal TV, on demand 24/7. AgDay, Machinery Pete TV. U.S. Farm Report on your phone and tablet. Download the Farm Journal TV mobile app today.
The deal is now signed between the U.S. and Mexico on Mexican tomatoes. The U.S. Commerce Department and Mexican tomato growers finalized an agreement that gives the U.S. the right to audit Mexican producers and U.S. tomato importers on a quarterly basis. Now, it's to ensure compliance with pricing laid out in the pact. As long as the agreement is in effect, the U.S. will not move forward with a long-standing anti-dumping investigation against Mexico's tomato industry that could result in hefty tariffs. Now, tomatoes are a top Mexican agricultural export to the U.S. It equals more than half of all the tomatoes sold here in the States. Russia is now reporting an outbreak of African swine fever. Reuters reporting it was found at a privately held farm that's near the border with China. China has reported more than 140 cases of the disease since it was first found more than a year ago. Last week, South Korea also announced its first cases of ASF happening at farms near its border with North Korea. And the federal government is updating those rules at most of its U.S. pork processing plants. It's removing limits on the speed of production lines and placing more animal inspection and food safety tasks with company employees. The pork industry saying the first significant pork processing rule changes in 50 years are long overdue, but advocacy groups for workers, animals, consumers, and the environment say the changes will endanger workers, increase suffering for pigs, and threaten the food supply. USDA Secretary Sonny Perdue says the change ensures food safety while eliminating outdated rules and allowing companies to innovate. The USDA says it is extending the deadline for dairy farmers to enroll in the Dairy Margin Coverage Program. The new deadline is this Friday, September 27th. Officials say more than 2,100 dairy operations have already signed up, saying the program has resulted in almost $230 million in payments being sent out already. USDA says the revamped dairy program offers farmers a payment when the difference between the all milk price and the average feed margin fall below a certain dollar amount selected by the producer. Now, margin payments have been triggered each month from January through July so far. Under certain levels, the amount paid to dairy farmers will exceed the cost of the premium. So what do rural bankers think about the current farm economy? We'll get that answer from the latest Rural Main Street Index. That's next. And later, there's a great need for dairy processing plants in this country. The unique story behind the latest edition in Texas coming up in the country.
Closed captioning is brought to you by BASF. Grow smart with BASF. We create chemistry.
Rural bankers in the plains and western states say the trade war between the U.S. and China is continuing to weigh on the farm economy. That's according to the September Rural Main Street Index. However, the survey's overall index climbed into positive territory to 50.1 this month. That's up from August 46.5. Any score above 50 suggests a growing economy. Ernie Goss, who handles the survey for Creighton University, says bankers are less confident because of the trade dispute and due to the new NAFTA plan still awaiting approval. Now, the confidence index, it remained low at 42.9. Farmers, they've remained focused on China as well.
China's been a tough competitor. They're always tough to deal with. They make promises, they don't come through with the promises, and we're trying to make them more accountable. But it's going to be a point in time where we can't afford to wait for that to happen.
More than 4 in 10 bank CEOs surveyed for the report say their local economy is in a recession. The market's starting lower and staying lower on Friday, driven in part by the news that a planned visit by a Chinese delegation to U.S. farms was canceled. Here's more on where we start out now from the CME.
Soybeans were a little bit easier. They started to build up on the downside as we got closer to the bell. the decline from Monday's high has been relatively steady. This is now like the third day in a row it's down. Right now, you know, what's the news out there? There's no damaging frost or a freeze. Traders are still hopeful for a short-term deal, at least with China. Now, that's a little bit of talk about the talks, but who really knows? So the market's kind of taking back what the big rally that started off really at the end of last week. That doesn't mean that all is lost right now, but we're hoping for something else. The weather looks like that the crops are going to get to maturity. That says really a lot, and so our yield numbers are going to be really important.
Bob Utterback with Utterback Marketing, our guest here in studio today. And Bob, let's talk about this acreage conversation, because for a long time, obviously, it was planted acres, and I'm still getting questions about planted acres. But on the flip side of this thing, harvested acres, that's still a conversation.
Yeah, the harvested acres is really going to be the defining figure. And there was such a confusion as to, you know, the late planted corn. Was it abandoned? Did corn that got abandoned treat as planted acres or harvested acres? Right. And so that is still going to be I think, the bulls' last big hope for the market. And that, you know, unfortunately, I think won't be answered until more December, January. And that's a long time for a bull to wait for that information to come. And I think it diffuses some of the bullishness of eventually what I think is going to be a reduction in harvested acres closer to the trade expectation we had back in June, July, but it's going to be in the market. It won't be anything new. And therefore, we have to have something to go with that acreage. We have to have the confirmation that yield is backed off a little and something has got resolved in trade. I think you have all three of those things working for the bull to reignite it in its excitement.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to see the kind of reaction that we saw in August when we got that big yield number, we got those big acreage numbers. It's not going to come back all at once.
It's not going to come back at once. And unfortunately, as you look forward now, guys are having to make management decisions here in the October to December time period. The market has big carry. The deferreds are premiums are back in. D's carry is at 65 cents. And if you look at the last 25 years, we've only been at these carries only 3 times. Last year, this year, and 2003. And when you look at that standpoint, you should be selling the carry in both corn and beans, but at flat prices nobody wants, and that's going to be the catch-22. The elevator is going to sell the carry. The farmer is going to put in a bin on price, hoping for flat price rally and incur all the storage, and what the risk is the back end could come to the front end, so you store it for the 6 to 9 months, and actually worse off when you take it out than you brought it in.
So many things that could change. Of course, we'll be keeping an eye on it. Thank you, Bob, for being here. We'll be back with more Ag Day coming up in just a minute.
To talk with Bob one-on-one, call Utterback Marketing Services, toll free at 800-832-1488.
Meteorologist Mike Hoffman here, taking a look at the root zone moisture map, and I'm struck by a couple of things, Mike. One, that it's still dry in the southeast, given the rain that we saw, but that did just hit the corner.
It really just hit the edge.
And then, of course, we're expecting some changes down in Texas, given all the rain.
I don't think there's any doubt the southeast corner of Texas will be blue in the map that comes out this week for the latest root zone. But the biggest area of blue right now, and that will continue because they continue to have areas of rain, is the northern plains into the Great Lakes. And what's amazing, but it's always true in the weather, is areas just down the road from some spots that are very wet are still dry. You go into northern Indiana, there are some very dry areas there. Central Illinois, there are some areas drying out. But you'll notice the driest areas are in the southeast, like Clinton mentioned, on up into the mid-Atlantic, central Appalachians. Also, Four Corner region, except for an area there, southeastern Arizona, southwestern portions of New Mexico. The dryness has started to go away in the Pacific Northwest, which is good news. Now, there's still some drought conditions up there, but it's more moderate drought rather than the extreme drought that we were seeing for the last couple of months. You can still see, like we've been talking, besides that southeast corner of Texas, it continues to get drier across the state of Texas, parts of Oklahoma, with some areas in extreme drought right now. Those areas of dryness in the southeast have kind of continued I know you get spotty thunderstorms, but basically it's real spotty. And then you can see there are some areas of dryness up through parts of Iowa, Illinois, and northern Indiana as well. There's the jet stream as we head through this week. We'll see a trough try to dig back into the northern plains the middle of the week. A little bit of a system there in the southwest may bring some moisture as well, but then look what happens by Friday. The ridge pops back up. Trough builds into the west. That seems to be the pattern we want to do right now, at least, as we head through the rest of this month. The ridge in the east and the trough out west. Temperatures this week, I'm going above normal for most of the eastern 2/3 of the country. Below normal for the western third. Precipitation this week from the northern plains down into the Four Corner region. I'm expecting above normal from East Texas all the way up to the East Coast and the West Coast. Below normal. 30-day outlook for temperatures. I'm going above normal. Great Lakes, all of the east through the southwest. Below normal for only the far northern Rockies and parts of the Pacific Northwest. And a 30-day outlook for precipitation above normal for all of the Mississippi Valley back into the southwest. Below normal for the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. We'll head to Las Vegas, Nevada first of all. Partly sunny and hot, maybe a spotty afternoon storm, high of 92. Minneapolis, Minnesota, sunny and beautiful, high of 73. And Tampa, Florida, hot with lots of sunshine, high about 91 degrees.
How a plant in Texas went from denim to dairy coming up, plus Machinery Pete.
We're going to talk trends with used planters. Stick around, folks.
Your next piece of equipment is on MachineryPete.com. Search equipment from dealerships across the country to find what you're looking for. Only on MachineryPete.com.
It may be fall with harvest in focus, but there's a few of you already making plans for 2020. Machinery Pete has the details.
In the last 30 days, I've seen an 11.6% increase in search traffic to use planting equipment for sale at our MachineryPete.com website. Now folks, I find this interesting because it pretty much jives with what I've been seeing on the auction market here the last month or so. Particularly strong demand for good condition, slightly smaller used planters. Now an example, last Tuesday on a farm auction in north central Illinois, this really sharp Kinsey 3600 12 row sold for $43,000. Now I know it seems a little weird to talk about a 12 row planter being small. I mean, I remember when these things were the big boys on the block. I'm sure you do too. But of course now we're living in the era of 24, 36, 48 row planters. But if we stay on the topic of 12 rows, back on September 11th on a farm auction in east central South Dakota, this really sharp 1999 model Deere 1760 12 row sold for $19,000. And as I look over the last month, I've seen 4 Deere 1760 12 rows sold between $19,000 and $24,000 depending on their age. Now if we really want to get smaller, I'll take you to a farm auction a week ago Saturday in central New Jersey, where this 2016 Monosem 4 row only been used 20 acres ever in its life, sold for $11,500. And on that same auction, this really sharp International 5100 drill sold for $4,500.
Thanks, Greg. When we come back, farmers are good at repurposing things. We'll see how a Texas co-op found new life, changing from denim to dairy.
Closed captioning is brought to you by BASF. Grow smart with BASF. We create chemistry.
A once-shuttered mill has a new lease on life in Littlefield, Texas. As our friends from the Texas Farm Bureau show us, the plant has gone from denim to dairy.
Continental Dairies selected Littlefield to build this plant mostly because of the location of our farmers and our team as far as the co-op. We really needed a spot where our Southwest producers could have a close place to bring their milk.
We receive 20 to 30 loads of milk a day, and in that process we make powdered milk and butter.
It was a denim mill for many, many years, I think from kind of the mid-70s till about 2015. Then the plant shut down around that time. It left a lot of people in this community without a stable job that they'd had for so many years. Littlefield is a town of about 6,000 people. We have about 120 employees, and about 60% of the people that used to work at the denim mill work with us now. Us coming in and being able to hire so many previous employees at the denim mill has been great. Most specifically, I like working for Continental because it's such a good company. There's a lot of people around here that say it just feels more like a family versus, a place to work. Our co-op is a group of 99 dairy farmers, and they are pretty much the owners of the business. And everything that we do is to be able to help them support their business and be more successful. I think that what we do here is so important, how much pride we have in delivering a quality product and a safe product. And everybody that works in this team knows that. We support each other, we help each other, and it just makes for a great day, coming in and working here.
That's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in, spend part of your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.